What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I would like to welcome you all to another edition of Wayne's Perspective, and I'm coming through with another Monday Night War session just for you. All right, y'all. So I know it's been quite some time since I've done a Monday Night War video, and trust me, I haven't forgotten at all. It was only a matter of time before I came through with another session. This one will focus on week 3 of the war, September 18th, 1995. On the Nitro side, I'll be talking about the fallout from the Fall Brawl pay-per-view, along with some quick results. And over in Thailand, Raw will be the go-home show for their In Your House 3 triple header pay-per-view. And on that note, let's go ahead and get things started. Starting with Fall Brawl 1995, this took place on September 17th, 1995, from the Asheville Civic Center in Asheville, North Carolina. Johnny B. Bad defeated Brian Pillman in an excellent opening 4.5 star match to become the #1 contender for the WCW United States title. Craig Pittman defeated Cobra. DDP, otherwise known as Diamond Dallas Page, captured the TV title by defeating the Renegade in what would be his first singles title, and up the card he goes from there. Harlem Heat defeated Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater to capture the tag team titles. Arn Anderson defeated Ric Flair in an underrated 4-star match. And in the main event War Games match, Hulk Hogan's team, consisting of Hogan himself, Randy Savage, Lex Luger, and Sting, defeated the Dungeon of Doom. Overall, I thought it was a decent show. Nothing more to say about it, but I would recommend checking out those Johnny B. Bad versus Brian Pillman and Ric Flair versus Arn Anderson matches, respectively. And the buy rate for the show, it was 0.48, which was normal for a WCW pay-per-view around this time in 1995. And from here, we go to the WCW Monday Nitro episode from September 18th, 1995, taking place from Freedom Hall in Johnson City, Tennessee, hosted by Eric Bischoff, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and Steve Mongo McMichael. We start things with the Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan and the Giant arriving in the back of an ambulance, followed by a real generic promo by the Giant. He says nothing noteworthy. So this was pretty much in the early stages of the Giants' career. So again, he said nothing noteworthy, so we can just move on from here. The first match of the show was set to be the American males, Marcus Buff Bagwell and Scotty Riggs, versus the Blue Buds, Lord Steven Regal and Dave Taylor. However, before the Blue Buds could even get to the ring, Harlem Heat attacked them in the aisle, so it was no match. And from there, we have an impromptu WCW Tag Team title match, which featured the defending champions Harlem Heat against the American males. It was also noted by the commentators that Commissioner Bockwinkel was not in the building, so that would become important at some point, considering whether this upcoming title change will be recognized or not. And on that note, towards the end of the match, we see Sherry, and this leads to Colonel Parker coming out the ringside. She, quote unquote, falls into his arms. Booker attempts a pump handle slam, but Buff Bagwell reverses it for the pin, and the title's at 4 minutes and 43 seconds. I gave that one a star and a half. Okay. Then from there, we move on to a Ric Flair interview in ring with Mean Gene Okerlund. Ric Flair basically said that Double A, he broke the code by bringing in an outsider, in this case, Brian Pillman, who interfered in the previous night's match. That was basically the interview right there, and it would not be the last time. Next up, we have Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff versus Johnny B. Bad. Orndorff wins at 4 minutes, minus a commercial break after reversing a power driver attempt, pinning Bad's shoulders to the mat. A star and a half for this one. I thought it was rather odd to see Johnny B. Bad lose, considering that the previous night he beat Brian Pillman in a match to determine the #1 contender for the United States title. But I digress. From there, we have a Randy Savage interview in ring with Mean Gene Okerlund. Savage pretty much discussed what took place on a beach, which was on the set of Baywatch. There was an attack by Kevin Sullivan, and it did look like it was unplanned, but for the most part, it was part of the show. Savage then, from there, he dismissed Flair's attempt at helping, and then, of course, Lex Luger came out to confront Savage after the latter questions Hogan's skill at character judgment, and Luger basically wanted to know if Savage had a motive or a desire to go after the WCW title, which he did admit to during the interview. And the other thing that I say about this interview is that the segment did do a decent job of making you want to see a Savage versus Luger match, which at this point would have been a first time thing, because even when Savage and Luger was in the WWF as far back as what, 1993 and 1994, or should I say between 92 and 94, there was never any match on WWF TV to the best of my knowledge. So it was very interesting there. So from there, we have a recap slash replay of the Giant crushing one of Hogan's motorcycles with a monster truck and the post-match activities in the War Games match at the pay-per-view. And the main event, which was a back and forth hard-hitting match between Ric Flair and Brian Pillman. And during this match, it was interesting because you could see that slow burn heel turn with Brian Pillman, because at this point, you could say he was a baby face, then he was starting to show heel tendencies at this point, and he was doing a real good job at it. And you know, when you see somebody putting their feet on the rope, that's a heel tactic right there. So Pillman was doing this thing with that. So it made for an entertaining match and obviously the best match of the show. Flair won the match with the figure four leg lock at 5 minutes and 27 seconds. I gave that one 2.5 stars. But if they would have been given a little bit more time, the rating would have been higher, trust me. So from there, Flair, he challenges Arn Anderson to a rematch for next week's Nitro. And again, during that interview, he said the word ass one more time. For those keeping track, that's twice in one night. From there, we head to Titanland Monday Night Raw. This took place in the Canton Civic Center in Canton, Ohio, which was another tape show hosted by Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler. The opening match saw Razor Ramon versus the 1-2-3 Kid. This was a decent match itself. The finish came when, after a ref bump, Dean Douglas, also known as Shane Douglas, he came out and hit Ramon with a knee drop off the top rope. The Kid then pinned Ramon for the win at 7 minutes and 11 seconds. I gave that one 2.5 stars. And after the match, we got a Dean's quote-unquote report card segment. Nothing more to say there. Next match was Kama and Tatanka with the $1 Million Corporation taking on Savio Vega and Bob Sparkplug Holly. I note here that the WWF's tag team division was less than stellar at this point, as you basically had two makeshift teams here, low mid-carders at best. Nothing more to say about this match. Kama and Tatanka wins at 5 minutes and 48 seconds when Kama reverses Holly's crossbody off the top rope. And I also note that it was 2 minutes longer than it should have been. So then we move on to another match. This will be John Pierre Lafitte versus Brian Walsh. Lafitte wins at 3 minutes and 14 seconds with a cannonball squash. The crowd could have cared less. This was a squash, another match where it was 2 minutes too long. The only notable part of the match was when Bret Hart called in during the match from the set of Lonesome Dove. And Bret, he also would be facing Lafitte in Your House 3. And if you can believe this, the feud started when he stole Bret Hart's trademark jacket. It was a basic squash, nothing more to report there. And then from there, we go to the main event, which pitted Yokozuna and Owen Hart, the defending tag team champions. And this was not a tag team title match, versus Men on a Mission. I noted that the dynamic here was interesting because you had two heel tag teams. Yoko and Owen won the match at 9 minutes and 4 seconds with a drop toe hold from Owen on Mo, followed by a Yoko leg drop. I gave that one about 2.5 stars. If it was a little bit longer, it probably would have hit 3-star material. I mean, it was a good match. I'll give it that. And to close the show, Vince McMahon, he interviewed Jim Cornette and the crew in the ring. Nothing more to say about that. So that was your go-home show for In Your House 3 triple header. I mean, what we saw was what we saw. Nothing more, nothing less. And the ratings of the show we have here, Raw did a 2.5. Nitro did a 2.42. So Raw would win the battle that night. And as far as the best show of the night, I'm definitely going to get that to Nitro. That brings us to the end of this particular video for the Monday Night War. I know it was quite some time getting to this one, but eventually I was going to come to it. So next session, what we're going to do is we're going to head into week 4. This will be the fallout from the In Your House 3 pay-per-view. And then on the Nitro side, we'll be starting to build up to Halloween Havoc. If you like what you heard and you're ready to become part of Team Discipline, go ahead and hit that like button and drop some comments and let me know if you're feeling the content. And last but not least, hit that subscribe button along with the bell so you're notified when I drop new videos. And until the next session, take care.